Now that you have learned about colors, let's talk about gradients. With gradients, we can create beautiful transitions between two or more colors. So continuing with the example from the last lesson, here we have set the background color property. Now we want to use a gradient. Now, gradients are technically images. So to set a gradient here, we cannot use the background color property. We should either use the background image property or the shorthand background property. We can set the background property to either a color or an image. So I'm going to replace this color with a gradient. To create a gradient, we call the linear gradient function and pass two colors. We can say Dodger blue and yellow. Now here I'm using named colors, but we can also use hexadecimal colors, RGB colors, RGBA colors, and so on. So let's save the changes and see what we get. Look, we get this beautiful transition from blue to yellow. Now by default, the direction of this transition is from top to bottom, but we can easily change it. So back to our function, as the first value or the first argument, we supply the direction. We can say to right. Now our gradient starts from the left and goes to the right. We can also target corners like bottom right. So we can say to bottom right. Now the transition starts from the top left and goes to the bottom right. We can also specify a degree for more control over the transition. So look at these numbers: 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and so on. So if we say 45 degrees, our transition will start from bottom left and goes to top right. Take a look. So we can say 45 degrees, and here's what we get. Now we can also specify the position of these colors. For example, we can say the yellow should start at about 30% of the available space. So take a look. Now, most of the box is filled with yellow. If we change it to, let's say, 90%, the yellow is pushed over here. Now we can also supply more than two colors. For example, over here, let's get rid of this position and supply a third color like tomato. Here's what we get. So we can get pretty creative with these colors. So this is all about linear gradients. But in CSS, we have another type of gradient called radial gradient. So let's remove this value, and here we're going to call the radial gradient function. Just like before, we give it two colors. We can say white and yellow. So in the middle, we have a white circle that gradually transitions to yellow on the corners. Now here we have a circle shape because our div, our container, is a square. But if we change the width of this box and set it to 600, look, now instead of a circle, we have an ellipse. But we can easily create a circle. So as the first argument of this function, we pass circle. Now we get a circle in the middle, but we can also change the position of the circle. So we can say circle at top left. Take a look. Our circle starts here and gradually transitions to yellow. So this is how we can create gradients. But we also have online tools that help us easily create gradients, and they generate the CSS code for us. Let me show you. So here in Google, search for gradient generator. There are many tools out there. The one that I personally like is cssgradient.io. Look, here we have a gradient with three colors. All these colors are listed over here. We can see their hexadecimal value and their position. So the first color starts at 0%. The second color starts at 33%, and so on. Now in this demo, I just want to have two colors. So let's get rid of the second color. We have a purple and a yellow. Now we can easily change these colors. So here's the yellow we selected, and then over here, we can change it to a different color like orange. Similarly, we can select this purple and move this slider around to get a different color. Now by dragging these sliders, we can change the position of these colors. So now look, the orange starts at 8%, and that's why most of the box is filled with orange. I'm going to move it to, let's say 90%. That looks good to me. Now down below, we can change the angle of this gradient. So by default, it's set to 90%, but we can change it to, let's say, 32%. And here's what we get. Now, over here, we can find the CSS code for this gradient. So look, we have two properties. Background, which is set to just a plain color, that's an RGB color. And after that, we have a second background property that is set to linear gradient. Why do we have two properties? Because even though most browsers these days support gradients, there are still some old browsers that don't support gradients. So we use a plain color as a fallback for those browsers. If those browsers don't understand this linear gradient, they're going to ignore the second background property. So they will only see a plain color, which is this RGB color. Now we can copy this to clipboard and paste it over here. Now take a look. So here's the end result. Much easier than creating a gradient by hand.